Today I'm joined by Jamie, and Jamie's one of our product development specialists here at BlueRiver Diets. Now, for a bit of context, myself and Jamie work for our parent company, Peregrine Livefoods, which has been running since 1987, and Jamie's been working here for quite a while, so he does have a lot of expertise when it comes to reptiles. So Jamie, I've just introduced you briefly, but can you just sort of speak about your experience through Peregrine and how long you've sort of been within the reptile industry?
Yeah, well, firstly, hello.
Hello.
So I've been at Peregrine since 2003, which is 23 years this year.
Yeah.
I've been working in product development at Peregrine since 2008, and that's when we developed ProRep as our first brand that we brought out, and it was really to give us an opportunity to produce our own products instead of just relying on what was out there in the market.
Talk about ProRep. So you have the experience dealing with a whole manner of creating lots of reptile products. Talk to me about some of the sort of key products that you developed through ProRep.
Yeah, so firstly it's really the substrate range that we produced.
Yeah.
So at ProRep, what we wanted to do is really take a fresh look at products and look at how they actually benefit reptiles. So many years ago, people would generally just keep reptiles on things like beach chips, sand, and that was really the level of development that gone into those areas. But bearing in mind that reptile has to live on that substrate all day, every day, for the whole of its life in captivity. So what we wanted to do is really introduce something that was going to be more natural, aesthetically pleasing, not just to the reptile, to the owner as well, because that's an important part of a customer making a purchase. So we really went back to the wild to look at how they actually live in their environments, how they interact with every element of that. Because obviously they all come from vastly different places. It's not quite like looking at different dog breeds.
Yeah, and we do have quite a vast range as well, so obviously it's quite instrumental in making this massive substrate range, and where you've got quite a lot of expertise to start with and sort of built that reputation. So for anyone listening, we do have Leo Life, Beardy Life, Snake Life, Spider Life, Tortoise Life Bio. We have some bioactive substrates, so obviously you help to create a lot of those substrates, and one of the best selling substrates in the UK as well. And you say you've been at Peregrine for like 23 years now, so a long time in industry. Throughout that time, obviously, I mean, I've only probably been at Peregrine for about 5 years now, but throughout that time I know that there was a bit of noise when I first started about making our own gecko diet, and obviously you was quite instrumental in making BlueRiver Diets. So can you just talk a little bit about sort of the backstory of BlueRiver? Now we've been over sort of your history in the reptile industry and where you sort of learned a lot of stuff. Can you just talk about why specifically we wanted to make BlueRiver Diets and maybe where we saw a gap in the market? Yeah,
so BlueRiver started in 2019.
About 6 years ago now.
It was a long time ago. So a lot of this has been in sort of development over those years. A lot of tweaking, a lot of changing. And in terms of the sort of trial that we was looking at, because we have our own Crested Geckos that we breed here, that's really where the inspiration come from. So a lot of the geckos that we noticed in captivity were overweight, and we just wanted something that was a bit more natural. So when you see them in the wild, they tend not to have that extra weight.
And we do work with EK through BlueRiver now, so we see obviously the wild Crested Geckos as they should be, and a lot of feedback we get online is people looking at it and they're going, oh wow, they look so slim and they're so long, like what's going on? Are they not, looking after themselves in the wild? Are they struggling? And it's not necessarily because of that, it's because we're so used to nowadays seeing Crested Geckos in a captive state and are so used to seeing this sort of chunky Crested Gecko that's the norm now. But you're saying that that's one of the reasons why you wanted to make it, to sort of combat this large gecko and bring them back to a natural state?
Well, it was that, plus we was also relying on other commercial diets that were out there in the market, and we really wanted to have an element of control over our breeding stock, what we was putting into those animals. Obviously we will feed them fresh insects. We are an insect breeding company, so we wanted to use whole ingredients where possible, but obviously it has to be in a formulation that is easy for the keeper to mix up, to deliver to the reptile, to the gecko, and for the Crested Gecko to obviously enjoy it.
Yeah.
So that seems like quite a challenge at the start, but when you start working with natural fruit powders, which literally come from whole fruits,
and we've obviously got a very high fruit percentage in the diet, with like some of the flavours containing over like 68% natural and real fruit content.
Yeah, it's 60, up to 70% in some of them. Yeah. And that's obviously the real driver for crested geckos. Yeah. It'll either be live prey moving, which they're attracted to. Obviously, they're not as active as other species of geckos during the daytime hours anyway. But they're also really attracted to fruit content. So we wanted something that we could have a variety of flavours that would actually attract the gecko to eat it, and they're getting everything they need in that setting. On top of that, we always encourage live food, just for enrichment purposes, but we wanted to produce the food for anyone that doesn't want to handle live food. So it's perfectly fine for that reason, but adding insects in there. Anyone that sort of watches the BlueRiver socials will see me rant on about this all the time. The range here, BlueRiver Diets, and a lot of other commercial diets are sort of complete diets, so your gecko will get everything that they need, but like you're saying, it is encouraged to feed live foods to your geckos, because it's not just benefiting them in terms of dietary needs, but it's giving them some sort of mental stimulation, some enrichment. And obviously the initial reason for creating BlueRiver Diets was to sort of get geckos back to a more natural state and stop seeing geckos so overweight. And I think feeding live foods encourages your gecko to naturally move around the enclosure, hunt, which again is helping them keep off that weight, really, isn't it? Yeah. But plus it keeps them active, gives them what we call enrichment in the tank. So it's not just them hiding away from potential threat, it's them actually venturing out with that natural predatory instinct that they do have.
So we've been over a little bit about why we create BlueRiver, and I think one of the key parts of that was obviously the low fat content we've just mentioned. Can you go over just how low the fat content is, and also some of the ingredients we use to make this possible?
Yeah, so the fat content is roughly about 5%, give or take on different flavours, but you're only talking the fractions of a percentage that they'll change. And for us to get there, we decided to use coconut. And the reason we use coconut is because it's a whole source ingredient.
So making it 100% natural.
Well, it keeps that, but it also allows us to swap ingredients out if we needed to when we was developing it. The other benefits we found with coconut is because they're medium fatty chain acids. They're actually a much cleaner source of energy for reptiles, so you don't end up with quite as much fat content in the captive bred reptiles.
So they're using these medium chain acids, you said? How are they utilising them better than compared to other fat sources? How does that sort of work?
Well, if you look at crested geckos in the wild, the primary energy source is going to come from sort of proteins and sugars, natural sugars from fruits, not so much fat. So fat is an energy source. So they don't need high levels of that. So medium fatty chain acids are much more efficient and easier for the gecko to break down.
So it works in a way that they can sort of utilise that effectively more, rather than storing excess fat through too much fat in the diet.
Because obviously they're going to be using their sugars. Anyway, the protein from insects, and obviously got the fat. That's there as a sort of secondary source of energy.
Cool. So we keep the fat content low by using coconut as a fat source, and that obviously helps us to combat crested gecko obesity, as we set out to do when we created BlueRiver Diets.
And because it's a whole food, we know that those fats have not been manipulated or
like synthetic fats or anything like that.
It's nothing synthetic in there, so they should be able to break it down themselves.
Great. So that sort of covers the initial why we created BlueRiver Diets, what we set out to gain by making it lower in fat. But now I wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about some of the other ingredients within the diets itself. One heavy sort of marketing point that we try and push, especially me creating socials, is that they contain inactive postbiotics. And I think a lot of people get confused as to what they are, or like what meaning they have in a diet. So can you just explain what exactly is an inactive postbiotic, and why do we include it in a diet compared to the likes of maybe pre or postbiotics, which people may be more familiar with?
So postbiotics are basically inactivated probiotics. And the probiotics deliver from the gut sort of peptides, enzymes and organic acids that are really beneficial.
So they're sort of improving the gut health, essentially.
Gut health, digestion, immunity, those sort of things.
Yeah.
And the reason we use Inactive postbiotics is it gives all the benefits that you get from a probiotic.
Yeah.
But you don't have any risk of any sort of live cultures there. So for the vast majority of Crested Geckos, they probably won't have any problems with
but if you're dealing
probiotics.
maybe with a young or immunocompromised gecko in captivity, which unfortunately you sometimes get, obviously it's saying by using Inactive postbiotics, you're almost not having that risk associated.
You are eliminating that risk, but they're still getting those same benefits. So that's why we use that.
So some of the benefits from using that, just to go over, would be sort of improving gut health. How and why?
Well, it would support the natural flora that's already in the gut. As well as adding those extra benefits of sort of enzymes, organic acids.
So does that
peptides?
I suppose maybe helps them digest the food maybe better, perhaps.
It helps them digest it. Plus they'll absorb some of those enzymes and peptides.
And I think something that we sort of mention in the website and bits and pieces like that is this word tinderlised, and I think that links to exactly like the inactiveness or the postbiotic.
Tinderlised just means they've been dried. So they're no longer alive.
Right.
But they've not been destroyed, so you can still get all those benefits from
So it's not completely denatured, but it just means that we're using a dead version of prebiotics. That is basically without the risk.
So cool. We get that. The other benefit we get is it's actually helpful from the food in terms of storage. Obviously, if you've got live cultures in something, there is a risk
in the refrigerator.
You can't actually predict at the time of feeding what that culture is going to look like.
One thing that I wanted to go over and talk a little bit more about in depth was our choice of protein source. This is something we sort of have a lot of people asking, why are we different, what's the reasons behind it, and I think a video like this really helps to sort of navigate that and explain to people our process in sort of choosing the protein source. I think maybe we'll start with why we haven't chosen commonly seen sources of protein. I mean, collectively in the market, as Crested Gecko diets are seen, a lot of them over time are sort of using the same protein sources, and it's the safe protein to use. So a lot of brands are seen to use whey, and that's something we obviously haven't opted for. Just explain briefly to start, why didn't we choose whey like many other gecko diets do today?
So the reason we never chose whey is because whey is a mammalian source of protein, and specifically nursing protein. So it's designed really to take young mammals and build them up quite quickly. Now, in reptiles,
so taking it sort of through like milk and like breastfeeding and stuff.
Pretty much whey just comes from the milk. From mammal sources. Now, reptiles don't nurse their young.
No,
they don't have any of that. They don't need that process to happen, and as a consequence, they're not really used to that type of protein. So what we wanted to do was, again, going back to whole ingredients, let's make it as clean as possible. So we just decided to use soya, and the reason we use soya protein, and it's not just soy protein, it's an isolated protein, and that's important because to isolate it is filtered several times to remove the compounds we don't want in there, like the oils, the sugars, the fibres.
So we're not getting, obviously people hear this word sort of soy protein and maybe think of sort of nasty ingredients that they don't want to associate or don't want to feed their animals and sort of ultra processed, but the soy protein we use is a soy protein isolate, and I think that's obviously, like you're saying, is quite a key point. Just explain maybe the differences between sort of an isolate and using sort of whole protein.
So the key's in the name. So what you've done is you've just isolated the protein out of the soya, and the other benefits of that is when you actually look at the amino acid profile of soya, it better suits the Crested Gecko's diet compared to something like whey. And again, certain things to highlight there is just looking at the skin and claws and nails of Crested Geckos compared to the skin and hair of mammals. They have different amino acid profiles. So
we've got different needs to more mammalian species, and
well we do. So if you look at mammalian skin and hair, it's more flexible. So it has certain high amino acids that allow for that, whereas with reptiles it's much more rigid. So the amino acid profile is drastically different. So if you're eating too many, if the diet contains too many amino acids that you're not going to use, they just get excreted out of the body anyway. So it's not very efficient.
So you mentioned about whey protein sort of promoting like a bulk and sort of rapid growth rate, which is great for mammalian species. And then our choice of soy protein, does that differ? Does it create a different growth rate or pattern, or?
Well, it does, because they've got different amino acid profiles, and they're used in different ways. So if you look at the bulking element from mammals, there'll be things like leucine in there, which will help bulk up an animal quickly. Crested geckos just don't need that.
No.
So what you need is an amino acid profile that's better suited for the structure of the skin and their muscles, and support them that way. So it's much gentler on the kidneys.
So it sort of encourages them to grow in this more steady, natural way. And obviously encourages better skin and more suited to those needs. Brilliant. Another question I had, I've done my research before I spoke to you today. I found out some cool information about amino acid profiles of soy protein isolate, because I was interested in sort of that before I spoke to you today. And sort of some research led me to discover that the soy protein is higher in arginine, which is one of the amino acid profiles. And then I was sort of looking into that compared to other sources like whey, and realised that they are lower. But arginine is quite important in reptiles. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but that sort of benefits us in using the soy protein, if we can say that. Talk about arginine and why that's important, maybe.
Okay, so arginine is... So if you look at amino acids, you have things called essential amino acids and semi-essential. So semi-essential basically means the body can make it, but you can top it up through your diet. Whereas essential amino acids, they have to be taken through your diet. Now, mammals can produce arginine, so it's a semi-essential amino acid. Crested gecko can't. So it's important that they get it through their diet. So when you look at the amino acid profile of soy protein, it's higher in arginine. Much more so than you're going to get in whey, because mammals they don't need
to create, like, to absorb, take it in as much, because they can synthesize it themselves. So it's important that they get the high level of arginine in a Crested gecko diet, because they obviously
they need it.
They need it, and they can't synthesize themselves.
So it's beneficial for reptiles purely because it helps heal their skin and scales. It boosts their immunity. Improves blood flow, it supports growth, particularly in the young stages and breeding stages, and it helps support reproduction. That's
great. So especially the last one helps promote reproductive mechanisms, which is obviously great for anyone breeding Crested geckos.
Well, yes, it is. So we used to rear our breeding colonies on commercial diets. The ones that are out there that everyone probably already uses. We did switch to our own one, obviously, which is the same diet that we're selling here. And what we did find is a 3% increase in reproduction rates. Now that may not seem like a lot, but when you've already got quite a high success rate with breeding already, as we have, that 3% is actually quite big.
Now, moving back to the choice of soy protein isolate as our protein source, I mean, we sort of looked into that, I know, through BlueRiver and Peregrine as a whole, and we discovered and came across the fact, actually, one of the selling points that sort of helps promote some people sort of maybe that need reassurance in the choice of protein. I mean, hopefully that's been reassured for what we've just spoken about. But also, soy protein isolate mirrors a little bit more closely insect protein as a whole rather than whey.
So it does mirror insect protein. From if you look at the amino acid profile, it matches insect much more than whey. Another thing to know is all of our ingredients are sourced through European regulated suppliers,
and that's something we have to be quite strict on.
Well, it is. It's part of our regulations. So that means that there can't be no GMO, they're not genetically modified. They're going to be pesticide and herbicide free. And
we obviously have certificates to prove all of that anyway.
So legally they can't be sold in the EU market without those.
And I know it obviously, just talking about that, it was quite tough. Initially, we're a UK-based company. We have to meet sort of strict guidelines in the UK anyway, which is quite tough. But
we mirror the EU regulations.
But when we went out into the EU and further afield to the States and places like that, obviously we have to sort of be FDA approved and meet certain requirements, which is obviously important.
Yeah. And like I said, all ingredients have to come from a supply chain that is pre-approved in the EU.
And just going back very, very briefly, we just went off topic there, but mentioning about the insect, it being close to insect protein is great, because obviously it must be a little bit more natural for crested geckos, because a lot of their protein they're getting in the wild would be from insects. But generically,
there is another benefit as well, in that soy protein isolate is much more controlled, even from a pricing aspect. So it allows us to keep things controlled all the way through the supply chain, which is beneficial to the end user. You're not going to see fluctuations, like things like whey. You do actually see fluctuations in price, depending on the time of year, depending on supply.
So not only affects the business model, could ultimately affect pricing to consumers in the end.
And just to touch on soy, I think a lot of the issues that people raise about soy as a protein source is because it's genetically modified. It contains all of this, and it doesn't.
But again, it doesn't. Well, what we use doesn't, because going back, we're not using soy protein as a raw soy. We're using soy protein isolate. So you're sort of stripping away any of these nasties that people don't like. You're using just the protein isolate, and obviously to meet sort of legal guidelines, it has to be GMO and pesticide free anyway. So really, we're not putting anything nasty into the diet. We're just putting sort of a whole protein,
amino acid profile
that is better suited to crested geckos. So talking about feeding live foods, I think naturally actually leads us into our next topic, which is another key ingredient and another big marketing point for myself when I'm sort of pushing the brand on socials to end users. Bee pollen, one of the ingredients that we use in our diet. So obviously, from my understanding, crested geckos will be taking in sort of pollen and bee pollen from the insects they're eating, because the insects will contain these aggregates on their exoskeletons, and they'll be taking this in anyway. And there was a study many years ago that examined the gut contents of some crested geckos in the wild, and they did find bee pollen. So it sort of supports that argument that they are taking this in, even though they're maybe not in the same volume as day-active lizards, but they are taking in bee pollen in some sort of form. So just explain maybe why we wanted to include bee pollen and the importance of that.
Yeah, okay. So we included bee pollen, one, because it is naturally in their diet in the wild, and as you alluded to, insects will get covered in pollen in the wild, particularly pollinating insects. And crested geckos will eat that, and it'll be part of their diet. And in fact, you'll see that across the whole, anything that's insectivores, where you've got pollinating insects nearby. They, and particularly arboreal, they're going to be eating insects that are going to be covered in pollen. So pollen's like little building blocks of you've got proteins in there, you've got vitamins in there.
It's almost like a powerhouse ingredient, isn't it, in some way?
Yeah, well, it supports growth along with the other ingredients there. Antioxidants, the health, and it also helps stimulate feeding. Because it's just another ingredient there. It's going to add a bit of sweetness.
Add that sweetness. So and then are they getting any energy from bee pollen as well?
Yeah, because you've still got sugars in there. And along with all the other ingredients in there, you've got sort of honey powder in there as well, which will add, which will be another source of energy for them. So it's not just looking at fats or proteins.
And it's just another ingredient that goes into the diet to sort of say, we have yourself and everyone else involved in creating this did think about it beforehand. We didn't just put together this diet, it's got all the essentials they need. Bee pollen wouldn't generically be an ingredient everyone go, they need it, but it's something we've put in because we sort of value that's an important part of their diet.
Well, but it's possibly been lacking in the past. I'm not saying it's now, but I know I've been in this industry for a long time, but it would have been lacking years and years ago. And as you learn about the differences and the different interactions of prey that they eat, that there's so much more going on than just the insect.
So moving on from bee pollen, we've obviously covered quite in depth a lot of the sort of key components and sort of marketing points within our diets, but fundamentals, obviously your vitamins and your minerals, which obviously makes the diet what it is and gives the geckos everything they need to sort of survive and live accordingly. Can you just explain the importance of our vitamin premix and how we sort of in the early stages, I suppose, selected the correct balances and what went into that?
Yeah, so the vitamin premix is unique to us. We start that way, but then you modify and change things because one, you want to get the best nutrients, including the vitamins and minerals for Crested Geckos.
It changes for species, obviously.
Well, it will just little tweaks for different species. But it's also obviously we've got the calcium, phosphor ratios where we need them to be, and it's also worth noting that a lot of pre-vitamin mixes have probably come from sort of bird diets in the past. Okay. Things like that. So we do tweak things.
Tweaked it to meet the needs of Crested Geckos.
But also to help with the formulation. Mm-hmm. So when you're mixing it, you end up with a nice, clean-looking food.
Okay.
So you've got no gritty or you try to avoid as much sort of grit or anything in there. So we look for the best sources available. For those vitamins that are still allowed to.
So that's something interesting maybe that I wasn't familiar with. So the base of the vitamin premix, although it is fundamentally there to provide the animal with what they need, actually depending on what goes into that and how it's sort of made affects the consistency of the diet.
It can do.
It's interesting.
If you use certain ingredients, because you can get certain sort of vitamins from several different sources. Okay. So it's looking for the right ones that actually blend well into the food. That they don't make it. It doesn't affect taste. Doesn't affect mixture. It doesn't affect the overall look.
So that's interesting, and just again, it just shows the amount of research and over time the amount of expertise that went into that, because it's not just, I suppose, they need calcium and phosphorus ratio and stuff. It's actually thinking, how does this present to the end user and to the gecko to make it in a palatable and consistency that they like?
Well, it's just getting all that goodness in there and making it attractive to the animal, but also the keepers, they're going to smell it. They might want to taste it themselves. I mean, we do say it's not for human consumption.
It does smell
but
nice.
All the ingredients in there are from safe human grade sources. And which probably leads on to something else I know you wanted to talk about, which was natural flavours.
I think that links it in exactly to creating the natural flavourings and sort of those really heavy scents that people get when they open. A lot of people open BlueRiver Diets and they go, oh my days, this smells amazing and I love how it smells, it makes me want to eat it, but none of that is unnatural. So can you just explain, we put on our packaging 100% natural flavourings, the scents are all natural. Can you explain how do we do that, without revealing too much, but also the importance, because obviously we are a UK based company and we wouldn't be allowed to put 100% natural flavourings if they wasn't 100% natural. So maybe just cover that a little bit.
So in the UK and the EU, we've got strict regulations on what we can actually say in our packaging without backing it up with anything. So all of our natural flavourings, because of the strict regulations within the EU and the UK, all come from natural fruit sources. Okay. Right? And that means that they can't be extracted from that fruit synthetically. It has to be through natural processes, natural extraction or fermentation. Okay. And then that is turned into a powder, so it's almost concentrated, turned into a powder, and that's when we add that in just to add more scent.
Okay. And that's what gives it the scent that people love when they open the packet up. Okay.
And like I said, it's all 100% natural fruit.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be able to claim that if it wasn't.
Well, we can't, and in the EU and the UK, over the last sort of 20 years, they've moved away from artificial flavourings anyway. Yeah. So it'd be harder for us to get, to be honest.
Yeah, cool. So I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to sort of cover about the diets. I mean, I've asked all the questions that I wanted to sort of ask today, and I think a lot of the questions that some of our sort of customers have been asking over the last year, like, why is this, why is that? And a great opportunity to obviously be able to talk to you today. So thank you for your time. I know you're obviously a very busy man with lots of projects going on. And
it's good. It's good to be able to talk about stuff. Just launching it and moving on to the next project.
No. But there wasn't anything else that you wanted to go over today before we sort of wrap this up?
No. If there's any more questions from...
Maybe I have to do it again one day.
Yeah. Because that's what we want to get across to people.
So just before we do round up, thank you, Jamie, for your time. We've been speaking about BlueRiver today and all of the key components and sort of deep diving into why we use certain ingredients compared to others and why we think some of the ingredients we put in are important and their uses. But obviously everything we've mentioned today goes into all of these different flavours of BlueRiver Diets. So in front of us we have our 6 core flavours. We have released limited editions in the past, and I don't know if James got any secrets. We might be releasing some limited edition in the future. He's not going to tell me, is he? I'll be the last one to find out. Well, obviously for you guys, but yeah, we do have our 6 different flavours here, guys. Each and every one of these contains, like we've mentioned today, all of these fantastic ingredients. They are 100% natural and contain real nice high levels of fruit for your Crested Geckos to enjoy. If you do have any other questions that you do want asked or that we haven't covered today, please do put them in the comment section, and maybe I'll have to have a private conversation with Jamie when he has got a spare minute and get back to you on those questions for you.